This is the Terracotta Army. 8,000 warriors buried over 2,000 years ago. One of the greatest wonders of the world.
Nobody was supposed to find this. Not the archaeologists, not the historians, not the governments, and certainly not the millions of tourists who walk past that burial mound every single year, smiling for photographs, completely unaware of what is buried beneath their feet. For over 2,000 years, the ground near the ancient city of Xi'an has kept one of the most disturbing secrets in all of human history. And when explorer and National Geographic scientist Albert Lin finally pointed his instruments at the center of that complex, the data came back wrong. Not incomplete. Wrong. Senior archaeologists asked him to stop. Some refused to look at the results. One expert reportedly sat with a single image on his monitor for longer than he had sat with anything else on the entire expedition. And when the team finally understood what the scans were showing them, the project was locked inside confidential files and never released to the public. So what did they find? That is exactly what we are going to break down today. And I promise you, by the time we reach the end of this video, you are going to look at the Terracotta Army in a way you never have before. Because it was never built to protect a dead emperor. It was built to hide the truth of what happened inside that tomb. And what Albert Lin discovered beneath it has rewritten everything. Stay with me, because this story only gets darker from here. The tomb that began as a state emergency. To understand what Albert Lin found, you first have to understand the man who built this place. His name was Ying Zheng. He became king of Qin in 246 BCE at just 13 years old. By 221 BCE, he had done something no human being had ever accomplished. He conquered every rival Chinese state and unified the nation under one rule. He renamed himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Most rulers, after achieving something that enormous, would allow themselves a moment of peace. A celebration, a rest. Qin Shi Huang did not rest. Almost immediately after declaring himself emperor, he issued a command that stunned his own government officials. He ordered the construction of his tomb to begin, and not as a symbolic gesture or a small memorial, but as one of the highest state priorities in the empire. His officials expected a modest burial chamber. Instead, they were told the tomb would be treated as a matter of national survival. It was placed on the same level as defending the borders, maintaining armies, and suppressing rebellions. Think about that for a second. This man had just conquered the known world. And his first obsession was his own burial. Why? The records from that period describe something chilling. Attendants wrote that the emperor believed the world was full of threats that could strike at any moment. He had survived multiple assassination attempts. He had watched enemies rise from inside his own court. He had seen a meteor fall from the sky with a message carved into it predicting his death, and when no one in the nearby village admitted to writing it, he ordered everyone in that village killed. Every single person. This was not a man who felt safe. This was a man who had conquered the world and was still terrified. And then there was the night that changed everything. According to palace attendants, one night the emperor woke up screaming. He ran through the halls of the palace, striking the walls with his fists, shouting orders that made no sense. Guards reported that he demanded the entire tomb be finished before the next nightfall. An impossible order, since the tomb was nowhere near completion. He kept repeating the command over and over as if a disaster would happen if the structure was not sealed within 24 hours. Nobody knew what he had seen in his sleep. Nobody understood what could terrify a man who had conquered an empire. But the attendants later wrote that his face that night looked like a man who had seen something in the dark that he believed could follow him even after death. The following days were chaos. Skilled builders were dragged from their beds. Workers were forced through the night. And then the numbers escalated into something almost incomprehensible. 700,000 people. That is the estimated workforce Qin Shi Huang forced into service on this project. Prisoners, defeated soldiers, criminals convicted of minor offenses, skilled artists and craftsmen seized with no promise of return. Entire regions lost most of their labor force. Farming collapsed, families starved. Work crews lived in dangerous underground tunnels where collapses were common, and the bodies of the men who died were simply sealed inside the structure they had been building. The burial complex they created eventually covered 38 square miles, roughly the size of Manhattan, and entire sections of it rose in a fraction of the time it would normally take to build a city. This was not a funeral project. This was a national crisis disguised as construction, and many of those who built the deepest sections of the tomb were killed, because the emperor had placed things inside those walls that he never wanted anyone to know about. The underground capital. Here is what the world believed for centuries, that the tomb of Qin Shi Huang was a grand burial chamber beneath a large mound of earth. Impressive, yes. Dangerous, possibly. But ultimately, just a grave. Albert Lin's scanning technology destroyed that assumption completely. Using a combination of LiDAR, magnetometry, and ground-penetrating radar, tools that allow researchers to see through the soil without disturbing a single stone, Lin's team created the first full picture of what had been buried beneath that mound for over 2,000 years. What they found was not a tomb. It was a city. The scans revealed a network of chambers, corridors, and halls stretching far beyond anything any ruler had ever attempted. The shapes of the rooms matched the shapes of real imperial buildings above ground: palace structures, office halls, armories, storage rooms, stables, and large open courtyards. The entire layout followed the same rigid organizational structure that the Qin government used to control China. This underground capital was not built to honor the emperor. It was built to function. The outer walls alone were sunk to a depth of 30 meters in certain sections, roughly the height of a 10-story building, buried entirely underground. There were paths that looked like streets, ending suddenly, empty spaces sealed in ways that prevented air from flowing between them. Walls thickened in specific places to redirect pressure and prevent collapse. Every element of the design made one thing clear: the emperor did not want anyone walking freely through these structures. He wanted a closed world that existed only for him. And he did not want heirs or future rulers to inherit it. The surface above was equally controlled. Hills were flattened. Valleys were filled with earth. River paths were redirected. Roads that once led toward the area were removed from maps entirely. Soil studies today confirm that an estimated 100 million cubic meters of earth was moved by human hands to reshape the landscape above the tomb, enough displaced earth to bury the entire island of Manhattan under several meters of soil. When the underground capital was finished, it was sealed with brutal finality. No maintenance paths, no hidden doors for priests or family members. The workers who built the deepest sections were killed or trapped inside because they had seen too much. Modern scans show the system has not shifted or collapsed in over 2,000 years. It was designed to stay alive in the dark. But here is the question that the emperor had to solve once the underground city was complete. How do you keep people from looking for it? How do you make sure that every army, every grave robber, every future enemy who comes looking for your tomb finds something else, something loud enough and dramatic enough to consume all of their attention? That answer is standing in a field outside Xi'an right now. And it is not what you think it is. The Terracotta Army, the greatest distraction in human history. More than 8,000 clay soldiers stand underground in battle formation. They carry real bronze weapons. Their bodies are arranged in rows that mimic actual battlefield tactics used by Qin generals. Their armor is carved with small cuts and dents to match damage from real battles. Many of them have fingerprints pressed into their hands and faces, marks left by the workers who shaped the clay with trembling hands. Workers who believed the soldiers were watching them and who sometimes left their prints on purpose. The Terracotta Army was placed east of the burial mound, facing east, the direction of the emperor's old enemies. First thing any intruder from the east would see was 8,000 warriors staring back at them. For generations, historians believed the Terracotta army was the main story, a spectacular achievement, a testament to imperial power, a guardian of the dead. But Albert Lin's work revealed something that changes the entire meaning of those 8,000 figures. The army was not built to protect the emperor. It was built to distract anyone who came looking for the real tomb. And it worked perfectly. When Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE, his death created panic across the empire. The government tried to hide the news for weeks. Rebellions broke out almost immediately. The most violent uprising was led by a military commander named Xiang Yu, who despised everything the Qin dynasty represented. His forces marched on the capital, destroying every symbol of imperial power they could find. They killed officials, burned supply lines, tore apart government records. When they reached the tomb complex, they did what any invading army would do. They attacked it. They looted the bronze weapons from the Terracotta army. They smashed the clay figures with extreme force. Archaeologists have found burn marks on the ground showing how intense the fires were. Some pits were so hot that the clay bodies exploded. The rebels shattered thousands of figures and set the wooden roofing above the pits ablaze. And then something strange happened. They stopped. Xiang Yu's soldiers, fearless warriors who had just torn through the most powerful empire in Asia, never went near the central burial mound. There were no tunnels dug toward the main chambers, no signs of attempted entry. Ancient reports say that men became sick when they walked too close to the mound. The sealed biological vault. Albert Lin arrived at the Terracotta army site feeling both awe and disbelief. He knew this place carried a long history. Now, Lin was not a traditional archaeologist. He chased the past like a detective, using technology designed for war zones. His work was well known and respected around the world. Even so, getting access to restricted parts of the Terracotta army was nearly impossible. For decades, China had kept the undiscovered areas under strict military control. Drones were tightly limited. Scans needed special approval. Even trained researchers often worked in the dark, allowed to see only what officials approve. Yet somehow, Lin received access that no foreign investigator had ever been given. From the moment he arrived, the tension was clear. Uniformed officers watched his equipment closely. Every drone flight was monitored. Every scan required permission. As his team set up their instruments, the silence inside the pits felt heavy. Lin later said standing in the restricted core of the site felt like entering sacred space. Very few archaeologists had ever walked in some of these areas. Even fewer were allowed to study them closely. Yet Lin moved through chambers that were untouched for thousands of years. He described the feeling as unreal. It felt like history was alive and breathing around him. Clay warriors stood tall in every direction. Some looked stern, others looked calm. It felt like real soldiers frozen in time. Every pit revealed new details. Chariot units were arranged with wheel spokes still visible after centuries. Stables held terracotta horses, positioned as if they were waiting for orders. Bronze weapons remained sharp and untouched. Each chamber felt like a sealed moment, a memory locked in clay and stone. But Lin was not there to admire the artistry. He was there to uncover what human eyes had never seen. He carefully deployed his drones, each equipped with advanced scanning technology. On the ground, his team positioned radar systems along the floor, mapping deep layers that were hidden for thousands of years. As Lin studied the silent rows of warriors, an uneasy feeling settled in. The beauty surrounding him seemed to conceal something deeper, something darker beneath the surface. It felt as if something was waiting to be uncovered, something the emperor never intended anyone to discover. And soon, through a bold use of technology, Lin would finally see it. The false emperor. Among all the mysteries beneath Xi'an, While the Terracotta army is already monumental, it is only the outer guard of a far grander, hidden complex. The emperor's tomb mound, a massive pyramid-shaped structure, has remained sealed for over 2,000 years, untouched by archaeologists, and mostly untouched even by technology. Its secrets are so carefully protected that even Albert Lin's scans could only probe around its edges. What lies inside remains one of history's most enduring enigmas. Historical texts describe the tomb as a miniature universe. Ancient chroniclers wrote of rivers of mercury flowing like canals, precious artifacts, and elaborate chambers representing the heavens and the earth. Modern soil tests have confirmed unusually high mercury levels in the mound's core, lending credibility to these accounts. It preserves the idea of hidden water systems while posing a real threat to anyone who tries to enter. Exposure to such mercury could be deadly, and the ancient builders seem to have known it, deliberately creating a natural deterrent. The Chinese government has intentionally kept the tomb sealed. In the past, excavation efforts in the 70s and 80s, pigments faded instantly, wooden structures collapsed, and fragile materials crumbled, would destroy history rather than reveal it. Today, conservation is paramount. The focus is on non-invasive methods, scanning, modeling, and monitoring, ensuring that the tomb and its surroundings are studied without disruption. Albert Lin's role was unique. Restricted from directly scanning the tomb chamber, he focused on the perimeter and surrounding structures. Even from the edges, his GPR and resistivity data revealed subtle anomalies, variations in soil density, and unusual layering that suggest multiple construction phases. Some of these layers likely supported heavy wooden or stone platforms, while others may have been drainage channels. None of this confirms the legendary treasures within, but it does indicate the builders applied advanced engineering principles to ensure the mound's stability and longevity. What's remarkable is the scale and sophistication implied by these findings of weight distribution, soil behavior, and underground engineering. Even without opening it, the evidence shows that Qin Shi Huang's builders weren't improvising. They were meticulously designing an enduring structure meant to last millennia. It speaks to a level of planning and technical skill rarely seen in the 3rd century BCE. The tomb also raises ethical and philosophical questions. Should we open it? Some scholars argue that scientific curiosity and potential historical knowledge justify excavation. Others insist that cultural heritage and preservation take precedence. The risks are enormous. Oxygen exposure could destroy delicate pigments and organic materials, and even minor structural collapse could irreversibly damage priceless artifacts. For now, the tomb remains a sealed time capsule, a monument to both the emperor's power and the ancient Chinese philosophy of respecting death and the afterlife. Interestingly, Lin's scans also hint at possible connections between the outer pits and the central tomb mound. Some anomalies align with the pathways of the Terracotta army, suggesting that the necropolis wasn't just a collection of separate pits, it was a carefully integrated system. These insights reshape our understanding of the emperor's vision. The Terracotta army wasn't simply decoration, it was part of a broader architectural and spiritual plan, extending from the outer pits all the way to the untouched heart of the tomb. The unopened tomb remains a reminder that even in a world obsessed with revealing secrets, some things are meant to be preserved. Lin's work shows that you can learn more by looking carefully than by digging recklessly. His perimeter scans provide unprecedented insight into what lies beneath, without ever disturbing a single artifact, highlighting a new era in archaeology where technology and caution go hand in hand. The terrifying discovery. The truth revealed by the scans was far darker than anyone had imagined. Beneath the flawless rows of clay warriors, beneath the beauty and the grandeur, lay the silent remains of the people who built it all. As Lin's team layered deeper scan data, they realized this was not a single burial site. The same pattern appeared repeatedly beneath multiple warrior formations. Dozens of underground voids were filled with human remains. For centuries, historians had suspected that Qin Shi Huang ordered workers buried alive to protect the secrets of his tomb. In several chambers, radar data pointed to violent structural collapses. Tools lay scattered beside the bodies. These workers were not honored, they were just silenced. Bodies were dumped into chambers covered with soil, and then sealed forever, as the Terracotta army was built directly above them. And then came the tunnels. The scans detected faint echoes, signatures suggesting air pockets deeper than any mapped chamber. Lin believed these were collapsed or undiscovered tunnels. Some stretched far beneath the visible pits. No historical records ever mentioned tunnels this deep. What disturbed Lin the most were the footprints. Using density imaging, faint impressions emerged in one underground chamber. Traces of workers running, stumbling, or being dragged. The soil had preserved their final movements, like a photograph frozen in time. Even Lin. It was a graveyard built through fear, sealed with murder, and guarded by clay soldiers whose silent faces concealed the truth. And one body, one skeleton buried deeper than all the others, carried a story: the breakthrough. For decades, no one was allowed to fly anything over the mausoleum, not even archaeologists. The area was considered too sacred and too secret. But Albert Lin, armed with rare permission and supported by cutting-edge imaging technology, became the first to send a drone into the sky above it. From above, the site revealed more than endless rows of warriors. The true scale of the underground world began to emerge. Patterns appeared, grids, alignments, and geometric shapes that could never be understood from ground level. Lin also used LiDAR, a laser-based mapping system capable of cutting through vegetation, soil, and surface layers. Beneath the visible pits lay a vast network of anomalies: empty voids, buried walls, collapsed chambers, and shapes resembling mass burial zones. Some areas showed signs of extreme heat. The ground appeared damaged, scarred by violent events. There were fractures in the soil, signs of sudden force, and scattered bone-like signatures. Something terrible had taken place beneath the Terracotta army. Lin stared at the data without speaking. He understood exactly what it meant. What lay beneath the Terracotta army was not just an emperor's afterlife kingdom. It was a graveyard not of honored warriors, but of victims. What this all means? Beneath the clay faces and bronze weapons of the Terracotta army lies a story of human toil, creativity, and sacrifice. While much of the focus falls on the emperor, the engineering, and the soldiers themselves, it's the people who built this extraordinary necropolis who truly shaped it. Each figure, horse, and chariot represents not just artistic mastery, but the labor of thousands of workers, artisans, and craftsmen whose lives were intertwined with one man's ambition. The workforce was enormous. Historical estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of laborers were involved over decades. These workers weren't simply digging and molding clay at random. They were organized into specialized groups. Some focused on sculpting heads and facial features. Workshops functioned like miniature factories, producing parts that would later be assembled into unique soldiers. This division of labor allowed massive production while still achieving remarkable detail. No two faces are exactly alike, and each soldier carries distinct expressions and posture. Craftsmanship extended beyond mere replication. Artists used fine tools to carve armor plates, add hairstyles, and sculpt realistic hands that held weapons. Some details, like painted pigments, have survived only in fragments due to the passage of time. But chemical analysis reveals that original colors were vibrant and meticulously applied. Even in decay, the remnants testify to a high level of artistry. Workers who understood not just form, but symbolism. Every element, from stance to clothing, was carefully designed to reflect rank, role, and military hierarchy. The human story also carries a darker side. Excavations and historical accounts suggest that while some may have been skilled artisans, many were conscripted laborers, perhaps even prisoners or soldiers themselves. The scale of the project, spanning decades, meant that multiple generations likely contributed, with families sometimes involved in the work. And accidents were probably common, especially in deep pits or when working with fragile wooden supports and heavy soil. The workforce wasn't limited to sculptors. Metallurgists crafted bronze weapons with extraordinary precision, using techniques advanced for their time. Carpenters built the pit frameworks and possibly the wooden supports that have long since decayed. Even soil and drainage engineers played a crucial role, ensuring the soldiers remained in place over centuries. The project demanded not just strength, but ingenuity, coordination, and discipline on a massive scale. It was a civilization-wide effort that reflected the empire itself, hierarchical, highly organized, and relentless in execution. The emotional weight of this labor is visible in the clay soldiers, each face with its individualized features, perhaps echoing the workers who made them. Some researchers suggest that artisans may have drawn inspiration from real faces, immortalizing colleagues, generals, or themselves in clay. In that sense, the army becomes not just a protective force for the emperor, but a silent monument to the people behind it. The grandeur of the necropolis is inseparable from the human effort it demanded. Every precise pose, every weapon placement, every meticulously planned pit reflects countless hours of labor, sweat, and careful coordination. Albert Lin's scans, while revealing hidden chambers and structural sophistication, ultimately underscore a simple truth. Technology can uncover structures, but it cannot fully capture the lives of the people who built them. Understanding these human stories transforms how we view the Terracotta Army. It is not just an archaeological wonder or an engineering feat. It is a testament to collective human effort, artistry, and endurance. Behind the awe-inspiring rows of soldiers lies a silent narrative of the individuals who made them real. They are, in many ways, the true guardians of history.
If this video gave you something new to think about, share it with someone who loves history, because this is the kind of story that most people never hear. And if you want to go deeper into the world's most guarded secrets, the next video is already waiting for you. The tomb has kept its secrets for over 2,000 years. How much longer can it last?